So moved. Ingrid.
Ingrid moves, Jim seconds. Any comments, discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. John?
Approved.
Ingrid?
Approve.
Jim?
Approved.
I approve as well. So that's that. Any public comment, Mark?
Not that I'm aware of, John.
Okay. Moving on to Rhonda, principal's report.
It's been a pretty busy month at Pematic. We've had some celebrations. We are celebrating Black History Month this month, and we have some bulletin boards and artwork and things up on the walls that's really brightening up the place. It's also Valentine's Day, so in February, so we kind of took a spin on that, and we're celebrating our school and what we love about our school. So everyone in the building wrote a little message on a heart, and it's hanging up down by the cafeteria in a big heart. I don't know. And there's just messages mostly about loving the people and the teachers and the staff and their friends, and just a lot of positivity going on. Kind of jumping around, sorry. I wanted to kind of give a shout out to Lindsay Ingram and Sonia Philbrook. Last year they had worked on building relationships with some students who were really struggling, and we called it a PACE program. But that has really continued. Those students have gone on to the high school, and they've stayed connected to a couple of those students remotely. So the impetus for that group was to build relationships between students and staff. So we would say that was a big success because of that. All of them, everyone in the program, they decreased the number of tardies, their absences. And yeah, everything wasn't perfect, but they still had some behaviors that maybe we wouldn't want to see, but the severity of those behaviors were greatly reduced. So we'll, be looking at how can we take some of that philosophy and embed it more throughout the middle school, because we really saw how important those relationships can be. Angela Paulson received an Emory grant for $2,000. She's buying nonfiction guided reading texts for the 1st and 2nd grade classrooms. From Miss Jeannie in the cafeteria, usually in a non-COVID year, she serves about 25 breakfasts, and with instead of people needing to come to the cafeteria, they're delivering breakfasts out to students. So she's up to averaging about 50 a day, so double the number of breakfasts she's serving. And then now that everybody is back in the building, the lunch count is about the same as it was before. With the buying of desks that we did with some of our CRF money, we were able to put desks in the cafeteria. So our K-2 students are eating in the cafeteria again, and the staff is super excited about that. One grade at a time, not all of them at once. The 4th grade has been doing some virtual field trips. So shout out to our community partners. The Acadia National Park has offered a lot of virtual field trips for our kids that are really things that maybe they've done in the past. Like every year, the 4th grade study bats. And so they were able to participate in a virtual field trip around bats. And every year, the 4th grade go to the MDI Biolab to really learn about research and what do scientists do. And they were able to do that remotely this year. So, thank you for those groups who are making it as normal as possible for our kids so that they can continue some of those great experiences. We have till February 12th to buy our Pematic wear. So if you want a t-shirt or sweatshirt that says Pematic on it, get out there. There's a link in the newsletter for that. And I just want, I have one more thing that really wasn't part of the report that we've learned in the last couple of days. Kim Schroeder has been nominated by a couple of parents in her classroom as a Hancock County Teacher of the Year. So a great big shout out to Kim. That's amazing. She is an amazing teacher. She is an advocate for education in general. She's a leader in our building. She continually keeps what's best for students in mind with any decisions that she's making. She is somebody who really, when we say teaches the whole child, she thinks about their emotional learning and their academics and all those executive functioning pieces, the organization. She helps them from wherever they're at to where they need to be so that going into 5th grade, they are well positioned to do that. So just wanted to give her a big shout out. She represents all the excellent educators that we have at Pematic, and it's great for her to be nominated, but it's also feels good as a school to have one of our teachers be nominated. So thank you to those parents who nominated her. Congratulations, Kim.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's the end of my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Rhonda? That's great to hear about the PACE program. I remember hearing about that last year, and it's good to hear that, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
That's really nice of Miss Ingram and Miss Holbrook to be doing that.
Yep.
Is that in the budget for next year?
All right, moving along. Speaking of budgets, that's what we got.
John?
Yeah.
Can I just highlight a couple things before I turn it back over to you or Rhonda? So I just want to give a shout out to Rhonda. We've made some adjustments since our last meeting, but in no way, shape, or form should that be interpreted. Rhonda, like all the principals, does her job well. And by bringing requests forward, I think it's important that she, as the building leader, articulate the needs, and then we move forward accordingly. So I want to underscore that, with her bringing items forward, that's part of our process, and at the end of the day, we're weighing all the things we're in, the uncertainty of COVID, where we think we're headed, where we'll be next year. And we're also, all of us are very cognizant of the times that we're in for families, communities, our economies. So with that, we come back with some recommendations for the board to consider. But I just want to underscore that it doesn't diminish the need or the conversation on some of those other pieces. I did send an email out yesterday highlighting some of those items, and just want to make sure, again, I prefaced, any of the conversations the board's going to have with those comments. These are recommendations. The purview of what we do or don't do rests with the board. We know that, but working collaboratively with Nancy and Rhonda, we're able to make some of these recommendations. The other piece to underscore is that I'm really proud of the fact that the principals were able to work with Julie and Nancy to be able to, not just in the Southwest budget, but in 2 other budgets, remove some of the technology requests that we had in those budgets. And it's, again, not removing them because the need's not there, but working together and collaborating and using ESSER funds, emergency secondary schools, secondary and elementary schools relief funds, we're able to prioritize and strategically network with schools so that we can meet the needs of technology and do that with those funds and efficiently. So that is one of the recommendations we see. The other piece is, for at least as long as I've been here, we've been talking about the windows, and I think the board's well aware of the condition of those. It's absolutely needed. Question is how we do it. And there are some healthy reserve amounts. There's some other considerations in the budget with the state of the building, the condition of the building, which is sound. But we're making some recommendations there, and the goal again is to have these things go way out of the budget. It's how we navigate them. So, that's another recommendation we made in terms of using some of those reserve funds to manage that project. The other piece is around the entrance project. That's a significant amount of money, and again, making that recommended adjustment, we feel that we could navigate at least the planning portion of that. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of those things before we get into it. But aside from that, I don't believe you'll see any other adjustments. Rhonda could correct me if I'm wrong, within the main budget that she reviewed, those individual line items. Again, we're still waiting for our information on insurance, which we'll have within the next couple months. And so that could result in some changes. And we still don't know the outcome of our collective bargaining process. So we have a placeholder in our budget. And so that's an unknown for us as well. So thanks, John, for just letting me provide a little bit of overview, and I'll turn it over to you and Rhonda, however you want to proceed. Nancy's not with us, obviously, but if we have any questions, I can give her a call or text her if there's anything that you need. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Rhonda, do you have anything to add or kick off, or I guess we can just open it up to questions if not, or move on from there?
Just one thing in the food service line, we had recommended dropping that from 80,000 to 70,000 just for the 1 year. And the board asked the question, what is the balance now? Because the balance that we were looking at was from last June. So we're at, keep in mind, it's a snapshot in time because money is going in and coming out, but we're at 62,000 in the fund balance estimated. And so Nancy felt good about dropping that another 5,000. So going from 70,000 to 65 just for this 1 year.
Okay. That's good.
That's really that's the only thing in the body of the budget that changed. We do need to decide about buying a bus, I guess, too. We're slated to buy a bus, but we aren't getting anything from the state because we didn't make the mileage cutoff.
Right.
And the board had asked, what would we get from the state? And we're such a low receiver that she didn't think that we'd be getting anything from the state anyway.
Okay.
Even if we hit the mileage, whatever.
Say that one more time.
Even if we hit whatever that mileage threshold is.
Right.
Okay. Because I was going to say, our house could probably put some miles on it for us.
We've the silly thing is it's what the mileage is of July 1st, and probably before school even started, it was over, but
Yeah.
it was really, really close. It was only like 100 miles off or ridiculously small amount.
We'll have to pay attention to that the next go
Yeah.
around and just ride around the
Drive
island.
around.
Yeah. So what does a bus purchase do to this budget? Anything?
I would say nothing because we have the bus reserve.
Okay.
And we, yeah.
As long as we have enough to cover it in the reserve, it would just be a transfer.
Mhm.
And we've put in here whatever we normally put in to put into the reserve account for that. So, I mean, I would say based on that, if there, presuming there's no positive or negative swing to this, I would say then let's just get the bus now. Right? And not wait a year. If there's no financial implication.
I would lean towards maybe waiting the year just because there's certain, like this, that means we unload a bus if we buy one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we should probably get it priced out. My only hesitancy is whether or not if the district's hiring somebody to start studying the transportation and whether there's any kind of recommendation that comes down the pike that might behoove us to sort of say, let's hold that back one more year and see if there's any feedback that would influence that decision. Probably not. We'll probably just carry on like we always do. I mean, but if we don't have to mechanically, I just am a little considering being a little conservative about that. But I think that I could go either way.
Are we legally obligated at some point that we can only keep a bus for so many years before we have to purchase it?
Well, John, the short answer is that most of the time that doesn't apply because, frankly, with the calcium chloride treatments of the roads, usually we don't get the, I want to say this, the life expectancy of the buses that we put. I mean, even so, it generally becomes moot. I'd have to research and see if there are particular, there are mileage requirements that we have to meet in terms of before we can apply. I know, give you a quick example. Swans Island, we never meet the mileage requirement, and so we because they just don't. So in terms of what those specifics are, I'd have to do some research, John, and get back. I'm really not in a position to give you hard answers or qualified answers right now.
Okay.
I can follow up, and to John's point, I think John Eisenhower's point. Maybe there's a couple of things that not maybe, but there are some things I should be providing to the board, and that is, the answer to that question about mileage, age, and the use of our reserve fund. And the last piece that he brought up is that, and I want to say this carefully, do we need all the buses that we have in each community, and how do we best deploy those if boards want to collaborate on those resources? We're coming up on a very opportune time. Our bus contract with SEER that Bar Harbor and Trenton have is going to expire, and we're going to have to either renegotiate that or talk about that. So again, I've been saying this since I arrived. Transportation is an area that I think we need to look at hard. Jim Sawyer and I spent many, many months talking about transportation. Jim could probably fill your ear. We learned a lot. We're not using, this is not, look, our drivers and our principals are doing the very best they can, but we are not using routing software. We're not coordinating transportation across our district. So there's a lot of, I think, I'll call it low-hanging fruit. And yes, bringing on the right person, we're going to be able to network, but those are questions that I can't answer tonight.
Do you know if anybody else is looking at buying a bus this year?
Yes. Yep. There are other schools within the AOS that are moving forward with that. And all of our schools, I can tell you, have a process that is very thoughtful. We have reserve accounts. We put money aside, and it has the least adverse impact to any of our budgets. That's a good thing. So that we're planning thoughtfully. But the big question is, should we buy the bus? Do we need the bus? And if we don't do that, what happens to the fund? So I will follow up on that, John.
Okay. I didn't know if you could get a volume discount or not.
Well, I'll just give you a quick, I don't know about volume discount. I'm not even sure if you can get buses and everybody across the country. And then there's a whole piece about electric buses. Now, electric bus, we're going to have our first one coming board at the high school. Our first one. We don't know the capacity. There's a lot we don't know about the electric bus. I'm sure it's all going to be a good thing, but we have to learn and pilot with that. We're in a very, very cold climate too. When the weather gets below zero, how do those function? So I have some questions around that, but real quickly, Bucksport, RSU 25 has historically contracted out their buses. Jimmy Boothby, and this is public, he said this the other night, they're looking at a 5% increase in their costs for their contract the following year. And over the next 5 years, a 29% increase to that, 34% increase in their transportation costs. He is moving forward purchasing 18 buses.
Wow.
That's great, Jimmy. That's great. But where are you going to get the drivers? Okay, that's another challenge for us. We need drivers. We're blessed to have the people we have, but that's another piece. We can have buses and we can consolidate. But, I worry, and the principals worry about how we're going to continue to meet the transportation needs, both with the person power to do that. And so that's another piece that folds into this.
Well, we've talked before. I think strategically as a district, we need to look at the positions that are hard for us to fill and elevate the level of compensation or hours or whatever it is. There is a reason people are choosing not to do this.
Yep.
If we want them, we're going to have to figure out what that level of compensation is to get people to want to do it.
Yeah, we're all competing for the same resource. Rhonda uses a term too that I chuckle because the principals call it poaching. People move around. We're all competing for the same resource across the region, and so I think it's important that we network within our district so we're not doing that to ourselves. But yes, Ingrid, I think incentivizing that. There are some things that we're already considering putting in place, and that is, if you want to become a bus driver, paying for the licensure of the courses with the caveat, that reimbursement that the person comes to work for us. Those types of things, along with pay and along with, again, I want to give a shout out to the drivers and the principals. There's a lot and a ton, and I think Jim will affirm this, a lot of informal collaboration. They're good people, they do it, but it's not formalized and it's not strategic in the way that we think it could be. I think this is an area too, John, where I hope this operations position helps pull all this together across our districts. Just the networking, the planning, that's really the goal here.
Yep.
I was just going to say, I think some of the waivers for COVID stuff have allowed schools to not retire buses on the same schedule they normally do. So we're probably still within that. I definitely we should check all the whether
true.
we need to. If we've got a bus that's almost less legs, we should buy a new bus. But, yeah.
That's true, John. The big thing that we deal with, and I see across the state, and particularly in the Northeast, it is the calcium chloride. It just eats these buses, and it's not the engines, and it's the frame and the underwells that just get. And there's actually, I don't know if they still do it, but in Northern Maine they had a refurbishment program going at the old, the retired Loring Air Force Base. I think that's probably still going, but again, that's one of the bigger challenges we have in the state of Maine.
Jim?
What kind of impact has COVID has on the cost of busing? Now, I see more buses on the road than usual during the day, but on the other hand, I'm suspecting that there's less use of buses at night. Do you have any sense of what that balance is right now for the use of buses? Is it more than usual, less than usual?
I think, Jim, we can certainly pull the mileage, and compare that. But I think your observation is correct. There are less activities going on. So certainly evenings and events for kids. I think one of the things we don't know, but it's a blessing, is the use of CRF funds where some schools have purchased vans, and that has allowed, again, that, not having that big yellow bus roll out with those fuel costs, tying up a driver, being able to have access to those vans has been able to transport smaller groups of students. And the licensure around that certainly is different. You don't have to have that CDL or license. So that's a positive. And I can't really give you the impact of the schools that have had those vans or that are using them, but I'm sure that is a factor. But we can get that data and take a look at it. But I think it's fair to say that it's probably down in comparison to what it has historically been.
Yeah. Pematic's running 3 buses in order to reduce density. Pematic is running 3 buses for its usual routes rather than 2.
Yeah. The other thing is, in some of our schools, we're really lucky at Pematic, but boy, oh boy, we're running thin. I mean, if you think about it, God forbid, if something happens to Larry or Lisa, they become ill and not able to drive, we don't have a lot of backup. I mean, Greg, and Miss Jeff Wood, God bless people like that are going out and getting their driver's license to help out, but we're thin. And in some of our neighboring schools, we don't have drivers for some of those runs because we don't. And that is a huge challenge. And we worry about that. Rhonda, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Oh, just the second semester, we had an increase in the number of kids coming into the building, and we had an increase in the number of families who wanted their children to ride. So we added that 3rd bus route that just does the Herrick Road loop. So there's just a couple of stops on that one road. So Greg drives that route. It's a pretty quick route, and he's loving it. He loves he is enjoying getting to know those kids.
Outside of the logistics and facilities and networking with principals, I think that this has to be one of the top priorities, transportation of this person coming in. It really, the need is in every single school, and it will not diminish.
Well, I think, unless we hear maybe then from Rhonda that we are in dire need of a bus, I don't see why it would hurt to wait a year, I guess, until we do get the transportation person in line and then sort of get through the COVID portion of all this. And that may assist the district as a whole to know that, the option is there. We have the money, we put it away, but, we're just holding off to see what our needs may be.
We did that in Mount Desert, that very thing, can we get another year out of it? And we did. And again, we're not going to compromise safety. I think it's important to make sure that we have the buses checked out, make sure it's in good shape, working condition. And if we feel we can get another year out of that safely, we'll make that recommendation. I see
Julie.
So I don't know what I'm talking about. So I just want to clarify ahead of what I'm saying, because I usually try to know what I'm talking about. But I have heard that there are possibilities that there will be additional incentives for electric buses, because they really want to make sure that we're starting to adopt those, and that that may be at the federal and at the state level. And it may not have to do with whether you're a receiver district for a change. So I think that waiting may be a really beneficial thing, because then the school board could decide for Southwest Harbor whether that might be a fit. And as to the coal piece that we keep hearing, it's kind of like we keep hearing that solar doesn't work in Maine, and yet we're at the same latitude as Germany, which is getting something like 60% of its energy from solar. Manitoba, Canada, runs almost all of its vehicles on electric whatever, and they plug them in at night. So I don't want to talk us out of something before we even have an opportunity to engage with it. And I think there may be a real incentive, and I'm speaking out of turn and out of area. Just want to clarify.
Thank you.
But
All
you're
right.
always research-based, Julie, so I know it always comes accurately.
The one thing we will be putting off is those that can't, we were planning to buy a bus that had those cameras, which would mean we have another year without that stop sign camera that we've been wanting to have. That would be the other negative that we had been discussing, but I'm in favor of waiting a year.
We do have $11,000 in this budget to put cameras on all 3 buses.
I don't want to put them on a bus we're gonna get rid of this.
But I think those cameras can be. Well, we'd have to check because I wouldn't want that to be the holdup if we can mount a camera and then remount it on another. So we can look into that as well.
Okay. All right.
So
Sounds like,
I have a question about I don't know if you're ready to move on to.
yeah, I think we're good on the bus thing.
So, so does this version of the budget have us transferring any money to the special ed reserve account? I couldn't find it under special ed, but maybe I was looking too quickly.
I thought we decided we didn't need to this year because our funds.
Right. No, I'm just looking for clarity. I'm not opposed to not transferring it, but
Yeah.
but if it falls under special ed
It's
transfer, where, yeah.
It's under the tuition line, the out of district placement. It's in green and it's just got a little dash. So we took that out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Jim?
A question on the front entrance. If I don't have my budget in front of me, but if I remember correctly, we allocated 10,000.
Yeah, we originally had 15 in there, Jim, and we pared that down to 10. But right now 10 is what's recommended.
Okay, and now is that just exploratory work or
Yes,
just
that's
exploratory?
correct. That's not amount to fund the project, but I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll own that. But I'm there. I'm hopeful that the person we can bring in on operations is going to be able to assist and work with us in navigating this. But $10,000 for that area and that scope. Again, if we can get in there with some demo work and see what we're into, then I think that it's not to fund doing it, it's to fund the exploration of how we attack the project. So I feel comfortable with that number.
Also entail kind of a plan so that when we do put it out to bid, people are bidding on the same project.
Yes. Your fallback also too is that, if we're wrong and this is not something we want to do, but how do we navigate that? We could potentially come back to the board and look at building reserve and things of that nature. And, I want to be mindful that this is a year we've retired some debt. Now, the school committee and the community has been good stewards of the building. It's in good shape. That's the way it should be. And we're going to continue on. But there are, Southwest Pematic as a building is in pretty good stead in comparison to some others. And I think that's a benefit. And so I'm confident we can navigate this.
Good. Any other questions? I guess I had a question about the tech position. What are the ESPER funds?
Yep. John, if I could, Rhonda can chime in, but I think Julie would be the best to really give the oversight, because I want to be really clear. The need of the school, Pematic and the other schools, is there. This is not in any way, shape, or form to take away from that. So I think your question is, how are we going to meet that need with those funds? So Julie, do you want to try to take a stab at that, please?
Sure. So the last round of congressional funding that for COVID related, there's sort of two different kinds of streams. There's the ESSER stream. We had an ESSER 1 and we used it to collaborate across the schools to get some more technology. We used it to fund some of the things for the virtual academy, which had students from all the schools. It was a district plan so that we could benefit. It kind of evened out everything through the schools so that it could help the district. The CRF funds were done by building, and those were completely spent by the principals. And there was a CRF 1 and there was a CRF 2, and those were much bigger pots. We're getting an ESSER 2 right now, and the ESSER 2 is not a huge pot of money. Collectively, it's similar to our title fund application. So we can do it as one application for the 8 schools in our district. And we can blend the money so that we can do projects that benefit the district. One of them, we became really aware that there were some of these pieces that would be put in all these different budgets. And then eventually we wanted to have tech support come out of central office benefiting all the buildings and a full-time tech integrator in every building. So in order to collaborate on some of those tech support positions, the principals worked with me and Nancy, and we're going to take it out of ESSER for next year, but then it'll be a phased in approach that will then get shared between the buildings equitably instead of having Pematic have to have half a position and everybody adding up and then having to sustain the positions on their own. And also so that we could get full-time positions, kind of like what we were talking about for the busing. So we're going to hire one person at the district office, and plus we're helping kind of even it out. So everybody in 2 years will have a full-time tech integrator and the equivalent of half-time support, some of that building dedicated and some of that flexible because of the nature of tech needs. You need both of those. Sometimes you need a group of people to be at one school getting everything registered. That will be much more efficient and effective than what we're doing now. So it's really a win-win, win-win-win. Because if you were just, if every school just did something with a little bit of money that they got allocated for ESSER, it wouldn't be very powerful. But doing it this way, we're going to wipe out all of the funding that's needed for the virtual academy and also get these tech positions. So I'm really excited because of two things. One, it's a much more effective use of the money. And it gets some things out of local budgets. And two, it shows how we can do some collaborative work together and continue to sort of create models of collaboration. I'm willing to take questions, but that's really the whole shebang, I think. I don't think I've left anything out, Mark or Rhonda.
No, I think you did a nice overview. Rhonda, I don't know if you have anything.
I would just add, it's my understanding that with ESSER, we can use some of the funds this spring and it can go into next year. So it's not like the CRF money where there's this deadline for end of December or June. There's a broader timeline.
That's good. I was curious, how is that you're hoping that would, translate to then a full-time or, some sort of position that it wouldn't just be for a little bit of time while the funding was there. And then we had to figure something else out. But that's good that the plan seems to be in place to make it a long-term, to start with this and then move long-term.
Right. And when it ends up being in budgets as something permanent, it'll be a smaller amount.
Yeah. It's a win-win.
Like poor Julie's, she's had to spend her entire year figuring out how to spend all this government money that's been coming in instead of her job.
Yeah. I think
that was
too,
my whole job, but that is my whole job.
I'm optimistic. I think that the type of work and collaboration that Julie led and the principals were part of, I hope can lead to more, strategic use of the resources past COVID. It's the right thing to do with programming and even, as we continue to operate, within the structure we're in, the AOS, there are opportunities. And I think this is a good example of how we can do that. Thanks.
If I could just add one more thing, it's a shout out to Rhonda. And I would just want to say, Rhonda, on behalf of Pematic, is engaged in several conversations. One is the pre-K with Tremont, which will be another collaboration that I'm hoping with Ingrid's support and the support of the community that we'll be able to pull off as another successful collaborative project between two communities. I think there are also very, very, very preliminary conversations about how could we do some very specific types of programming more collaboratively with different schools, sometimes with a whole district, sometimes with maybe, 2 or 3 schools. And those conversations, I know I'm an eternal optimist, but I think that they're going to lead to some really nice possibilities. And I want the board to know that Rhonda has been extremely both assertive and part of the impetus behind getting some of those started this year, so we can consider whether they can happen for next year or the year after. And that's timing that not all the principals are. Usually we're going like from the thing in front of us to the thing in front of us to the thing in front of us. We don't always get to pick our head up and say, okay, well, if we really wanted this to happen next year, or we really wanted this to happen in 2 years, what would we need to put in place at each of the schools? And so we're having that conversation, and that is really impressive. And I don't know where Rhonda's going to find the time, but I'm very excited that she's committing to these conversations. And by the end of March, we should know much more about what we're able to move forward.
John.
Thank you, Rhonda. But what something Julie just said just brought to me to mind, and this can go, we can have this conversation after we're done with budget, but what we were talking about in the AOS meeting about, we don't know that we're not going to still be in this sort of COVID zone next fall. If that's the case, does pre-K go forward? Because we won't have the busing, will we? If they're still managing the whatever, they're maxed out now, aren't they?
You want to hear my 2 cents on this?
Yes, please. I love pre-K. So just a second.
Well, from my perspective, and I've shared this with Mark and I've shared it with Rhonda, there are schools nationwide and in the state that are following the 3-foot distancing instead of 6 feet. They're as statistically as safe as we are at 6 feet. So from my perspective, even if we're masked and still in this, we have to distance. I will be a strong advocate for the 3-foot distancing so we can get all of the kids in the schools 5 days a week. And so I think that also will dial back some of those requirements on the buses as well. So.
Yeah, Julie.
We had a conversation today about how many kids we'd be able to fit in for each of the shifts, even with the distancing that we have to be doing now. And I think we're going to be fine.
Right, yes.
Good. There's always double masking.
And there must be something like triple busing. And
That's right.
Very good,
man. Any other questions about the budget or comments?
Supportive of the additional items that are in there. So, I mean, I don't think we're voting on this tonight. Is that accurate? It's not listed as an action item. So,
No.
Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll hear before our next meeting that insurance is lower than we think and we can make some adjustments or something, but.
Yeah.
That's correct. You don't need to vote tonight, John or Ingrid.
Okay. Do we want to discuss additional help for Rhonda? I mean, I know it's not necessarily in the budget, but do we want to discuss what options there may be for that could be creative, or, something that isn't necessarily an assistant principal or the cost of an assistant principal, but still gets her some of the assistance she needs? I don't know if that exists.
Just remembered you sent out that breakdown of tests, and I have to admit, I didn't read it. Let me pull that up.
I would just say Rhonda and I met today. And Rhonda, please, speak up. I think we kind of brainstormed some things and talked through some stuff. And I don't know, my takeaway from the conversation was that Rhonda felt a little bit better about how to navigate some of this stuff. I don't know. Share your thoughts.
I think too, and we're in the middle of COVID, and how can we really make a lot of changes at this point? Let's wait and see, what the maintenance and transportation director, what that takes off my plate. If I weren't meeting every week with A-team and elementary principals and the nurses, that's an additional, I don't know how many meetings a month, a lot more meetings a month. I think I'm going to back off of that and let's see how things play out here in the next few months.
Yeah. I have to imagine, I know in the summers when we were working, just at least like an additional 1 or 2 hours a day, just dealing with things because of COVID, just that aren't normally there, that you now have to deal with. It's like, oh, we ran out of masks. Okay, there's an hour out of my day. I got to go get more masks, just all that kind of stuff. It's just, it adds up and stressful too. Believe me, I understand, that's for sure. But that seems like a good plan.
So I appreciate everyone's support and willingness to think outside the box on that. But I think I'm good for right now.
Okay.
Please bring it back to us next year. Let us know how it's going.
Okay, thank you.
John, I appreciate you mentioning the social emotional piece. I had a meeting this afternoon with association presidents. That piece came up. I had a meeting with the nurses this morning. That piece came up, and I don't, the toll that it's taken on all of us, families, you all, our teachers, our kids. It's a hard one, and it's very significant, and that's one of the things that keeps me up at night is that piece. So appreciate you keeping that in the front view mirror.
Julie.
Rhonda didn't pay me to come here and say nice things about her and Pematic. I just want to clarify, but I did want to share, because I think the board deserves to know, we started our 4 collaboratories just in January this year because everything was so crazy in the fall and we weren't sure how things were going to run or if we were going to be whatever. And we decided to do it all virtually, and then all 4 of them are underway. And the smaller schools have had difficulty sort of having representatives on all of them, but the smaller schools have all worked with me really hard to make sure that they have representation on at least 3, so that all of the collaboratories have representation from 5 or 6 different schools. That was in the report that I shared at the AOS meeting. Just specifically for Pematic, they have 3 representatives on the trauma-informed practices, to go back to the social emotional and really trying to figure out for Pematic how we can be working in a way that is really deeply supportive. There's also Rhonda and Kelly on the restorative justice and the restorative practices. And that is a collaboratory to really look at middle school and high school. So it's a seamless transition around how are we going to work with discipline differently and base it in relationships and base it in community and figure out some different ways to handle things so that we aren't causing our own problems, which is some of what we've been doing in the past. So by doing sort of everyone's heard like zero tolerance has ended up being lots of more problems. And so looking at our discipline ladder, figuring out what the actual issues are that we want to solve for, and then researching what programs out there are that are going to be effective, and working in tangent with with the anti-racism task force group that's also looking at different aspects of this. And Pematic also has a representative on the diversity, equity, and inclusion collaboratory. So I just want to give a shout out. And then in addition, Pematic is implementing touchstones in some of the classes that are going on. And so that is the focus of the fourth collaboratory. So just so the board is aware, Pematic is very, very engaged and involved with those initiatives.
Yeah, Rhonda.
Wanted to kind of make it very explicit that all of those collaboratories and all of the initiatives that we have going on are all about social emotional learning and about supporting students in different ways. So, and about relationship building, which is the crux of the social emotional piece. So just thank you for offering the collaboratories that are
Well,
effective.
you're revealing and making transparent my plan. You're not supposed to show that they're all different ways into the same thing, because I think that will be much more powerful. Think about it, 47 people thinking and taking actions on different ways to really look at a similar piece is a lot more powerful than trying to have another program or another person.
John?
First a comment and then a question. I just have to say, Rhonda, Julie, from the point of view of watching kids coming to Camp Beechcliff, we have definitely seen that there's far more shared experience from the kids coming from the different schools across the island. And I think that's fantastic. That, just seeing, to watching my kids come up and over the years, they have a lot more in common because they've had shared curriculums and shared group experiences and everything. And I think that's really great for the island. My question was, how did the short Thursday go? And for both the morning and the afternoon for the staff.
I would say it went really well. They were energized. There were a lot of comments about it was so great to sit down with so-and-so and look at the data, the DRA data or the EMDI data or NWA data and make some really specific plans for kids and have the time to actually talk with another educator about what they were thinking for particular kids. So I would say that it was super beneficial and people are thankful and excited by the work.
How did it go at Beechcliff and at Harbor House?
It's what we've been doing for so long that, I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a shorter remote learning day for us. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the kids are not having to do remote instruction during that time, but it's to us, it just feels like an extension of what we've been doing for since.
For CBC, I wasn't there, but everybody's thrilled to have kids back. It's been so long, and but there was definitely some rust. Like, oh, wait a second, why did we do this before? No, but it went fine, and the kids reported having a great program, so that's good.
Well, thanks to you both as community partners for making that available. That's really, really important.
I will say that the kids think that Friday, I mean, like that feels like, oh, the weekend's beginning. So I don't know what you see in the school setting on Fridays, but it's a different feeling, I think, for my staff too, because it feels like, oh, wait, we just had a long day and the weekend's supposed to start. And then they come back on Friday and they're like, oh, no, it's not.
We're going to find out what it feels like because we have to do, another one this week. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how the kids are on the Fridays. I mean, just maybe have the teachers just see if they notice any difference, if it just seems like another day or if the kids are kind of approaching it a bit differently. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
this might not be the best Friday to be looking at that.
Oh,
with
that's true.
They're
we
all,
keep that in mind after vacation.
yeah, everybody's got a well-deserved vacation coming up, that's for sure. I'm sure the teachers are looking forward to it probably more than the kids, I imagine. But
I think the kids feel like they haven't really been in school much when you factor in the remote learning after Christmas and all of that. It feels different, I'm sure, to the, it's not.
does anybody else have any other questions budget wise? I think we covered most of the changes on there. It looks good. And what's right now we're at a 3 point something increase?
Yeah, it's below 4. John, may I have your permission or the board's permission just to, I believe, well, it's been announced publicly, but there's an interim manager in Southwest, Dana Reed. And
Yeah.
I just like with Nancy to coordinate, just upcoming meetings so we can make sure that, everything's aligned between his office and the select board. So are you okay with us just informally reaching out to make that connection?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have a meeting scheduled with the select board or the warrant committee yet. Yeah.
We probably should.
We'll get on that.
Anybody want? I did the selectmen's meeting yesterday. About what you'd expect, and but Dana is trying to get his arms around what's going on, and the one thing that's pertinent to us vaguely is the garage, and the current approach is to pick a lower number they think the voters will approve and have the designers design to that number and see what they end up with. So I would not be surprised to see the school bus bay disappear. But again, it's all site stuff anyway, so I don't know what they're going to do.
So I left the meeting after the Chris's Pond conversation.
Oh, right. You were there.
After an hour, I had my fill.
It went on.
I'm sure. So when you say, are they just gonna randomly pick a number that they put on as a warrant article item for the voters to say, yes, this number works
They're
for
going
us?
to pick a number lower than the previous number and see what the designer thinks they can do to meet that number and what will be sacrificed as a result. And then, they're hoping that the lower number will get past the voters. Yeah.
All right. Interesting approach.
Just throwing it out there and seeing if it
Pretty much.
sticks.
Somebody's going to be left without a chair when the music stops.
Yeah.
Oh. Anything else? No? Good. All right.
Do we need to, do we want to have an executive session to just talk among ourselves about the conversations in the executive session at the AOS, or we're cool?
You would have to
Publicize
want to do that, John, and John as the chair. You certainly could do an adjustment to the agenda. I wouldn't recommend it. Normally, you'd want to post this in advance. The board can hold an executive session, but unless it were an emergency, I would not advise you to do that this evening.
Okay. I don't know that we need to. I just wanted if folks wanted to have that.
Yeah.
You certainly, if the board wants to do that, you certainly could hold a special meeting, post that, and we can facilitate that if that's what the board would like to do.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that if we need it, or just kind of wait and see what happens approach?
So the process at this point, right, is that Heather is going to circle back with the AOS board, right?
Yes. An invitation is going out to hold a meeting as a follow-up to the discussions that were held with the board. And I think, after that meeting is held, then information, my understanding, will come back.
Okay.
So
Not like I
think-
heard everybody's point of view at that meeting, so I don't feel like we need to. I was just wondering if others
I would
felt
say
we needed to.
wait until the next time we meet. And see
Yep.
whether-
No action items on the menu. Any other business?
Not aware of any from my end, John, and I'm not aware of any additional public comment. I don't know if Rhonda has anything or anybody else.
Okay. No? Good. Future agenda items. Clearly, we have the budget. I think that's overarching because that'll include things like, the bus and anything else we have hanging over. Yeah, Mark?
I think it's, John, it would be, looking at, and Ingrid's brought this up before, but the retirement of the debt service and how we're going to continue to manage keeping an excellent building in great condition and moving forward. And, we certainly have the Sealander plan, but that's going to age out. And I think what the board would like and the community would like to do in terms of considering short-term, mid-term, and potential long-term care and use of the building, so we can continue to be strategic. So I don't know if that's a workshop or it could be a workshop, but just want to put that out there for the board so that we can stay ahead of it. You're in a very good place, and like to see you. I mean, we can be very proud of the building and like to see it stay in that condition. And there's a lot of conversations going on throughout the AOS. Certainly the conversation about, middle level education, the conversation about what Bar Harbor may or may not do with their building, Tremont. And so I just think it's important to keep that in the forefront. Thank you.
Yeah, it might not be a bad thing to, Craig and Rhonda can at some point get together and see if there's anything that they know that's pressing that's coming up that we're going to need. But one thing I know off the top of our head, I think our boiler is getting old. I think we had talked about that, and that's a big budget item.
Well, that horseshoe has got, we don't have that for next year, but it absolutely has to be in the following year. I mean, that you're either walking on ice that's, water that's frozen, or you're walking through puddles that are well over the tops of your shoes. Like it's not an effective parking area at all.
Rhonda?
In the principal's report on the last page, there's that link to the Pematic Long Range Building Plan.
Okay.
So take a look at that. That's what Greg and I have proposed for like the next 5 years. And so
Okay.
that would be a starting point.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
We could, take a look at that and see what adjustments, shifting columns that the board would like to see.
Thank you.
Do we need to ask Selena to put the executive session thing in there as a placeholder in case we do feel we need to discuss it at that point?
I mean, when the process we've used, John, may I?
Yeah.
The process we've used is that before we release the agenda, I collaborate with Rhonda, we get back and John approves. And certainly before the next agenda goes out, if the board feels it's warranted and John puts it on there, you can have it on the agenda. If you don't need it, you don't have to hold it, but that's absolutely not a problem. So whatever you'd like to do, we'll make it happen.
Cool. Any other future agenda? Good. Date, time, and place of the next meeting, Wednesday, March 10th at 5 p.m. I'm assuming we'll be right here. Just put it on the calendar. I think that's it. All right. Do we need to make a motion to adjourn or just adjourn?
You need a motion, sir, and you need a vote. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just got to do it.
Yep.
Move to approve adjournment, Ingrid.
Second,
Second, Jim. All right. No discussion. Ingrid,
Approve. And
Jim,
aye.
John, and I